welcome back to the programme. Good to have you with us this morning. Now, the UK has seen a rise in stabbings, but could deadly knife attacks be predicted before they actually happen? That's the thought of Detective Inspector John Massey, who found a link between the stabbing locations that happened in one year and the incidents that happened the following year. It's after research was carried out alongside the University of Cambridge criminologists. The study found 67% of the killings had been in places where there had been at least one stabbing the previous year. Well, let's get some more on this with Christian Foley. He joins us now via London. He's a spoken word educator, which means he's a global freestyle musician, poet, writer, and he works in schools and prisons in London. He's changed the perception of what we mean by excluded children. Morning to you, Mr. Foley. Thanks for being with us this morning. Now, you've spoken about having children arrive in your classrooms bleeding from knife attacks. What do they say happened to them when they come in like this? And what do you say to them?
It's kind of an open secret that we both know what happened from both sides, but they will never say that they've been stabbed. They'll say they fell on a knife in the kitchen. They'll say it was something else. Often they'll try and hide the wound by stuffing tissues down their tracksuit or whatever. So as teachers now, we're having to become almost paramedics and then take them to hospital and stuff like that. And when we entered the profession initially, it wasn't to do those kind of things, but now that is becoming part of the role, as it is to become a counsellor or a social worker. So
what do you think the biggest cause of this new knife crime epidemic, if you like, is?
In a way, it's not a new knife crime epidemic. The media are portraying this as a sudden spike or an explosion in knife crime, where it's not. It's the accumulation of a long term of cutting youth services, and after about 10 years, this is always going to happen. This growing and growing problem. It all comes down to, I mean, obviously it's multifaceted. There's so many factors, but all of those factors are united by one, which is poverty. Knife crime does not happen in areas of affluence. It happens in deprived areas. So if you could fix the poverty of the UK, that would be a start to preventing the knife crime.
Now, your work helps children through music, through poetry. I just want to play a clip that we have of one of your performances.
And if there is a God, then may they bless and you rest. P.S. I have two registers in my head, one for the living and one for the dead. I say your name, and I say your name again. No violence, just heart, the beat, flatline silence. He who taught me that we could never save him. For if we don't teach code breaking, what's the point of education?
I mean, that image of a register for the living and dead is really very powerful. What kind of psychological toll does this take on the children that you're dealing with, and how does your work help?
The toll it takes is massive, but often it's not delved into. A lot of children, particularly this is a predominantly masculine problem, and there's something that happens with boys growing up where they feel unable to articulate how they feel, or they feel that in doing so they're expressing a sign of weakness, and they're growing up in areas where you can't be vulnerable and you can't be weak, so people kind of keep this in. My work is finding a way for these children to be able to communicate, and I do that through the medium of music, where they feel it's a comfortable and safe space to come to my studio to be able to talk about what's happened. We're seeing children essentially suffering PTSD. They're essentially suffering the same kind of psychological conditions that you would if you came out of a war zone, because they're living under high adrenaline situations almost all of the time, to the point where prison is not a deterrent. Prison is actually a lot safer for them, and so they feel they go to prison for carrying a knife. That's acceptable because it would be a place of safety. And they carry knives not because they want to kill, generally speaking. They carry knives because they fear for their lives. And it's this whole climate of fear that has permeated, an entire city and an entire nation, really.
Yeah.
And these children are highly scared.